out like a thematic exhibit or, a thematic presentation where I'm going to tell the story about the pandemic and illustrate the story with different philatelic items. And I'll talk a little bit about the philatelic aspects of those items, but I'll also have the story thread. So you'll be able to see the story thread will be in white mostly, and all the philatelic descriptions will be in blue. So first chapter, a novel coronavirus spreads around the world. So back in December of 2019, everything all started with this cluster of pneumonia cases that was reported in Wuhan, China. So this is a maxi card. This is actually a maxi card from Vietnam that was issued. This was a Valentine's Day stamp that was issued on February 14th, but it shows, it has the inscription Wuhan Kiss, and it shows a nurse in Wuhan who was going to get married to her boyfriend on February 14th. And she's, they're both wearing masks and they're kissing each other through a glass. So this was when it all started. This is when the pandemic started. It's 6 or 7 months ago now. It's unbelievable how, we've been through this whole time. But, this is a nice kind of illustration of where things all initiated. And you'll see that it mentions nCoV with COVID-19 in brackets. nCoV was what we initially called it because we eventually figured out that this cluster of pneumonia was caused by a novel coronavirus. And so what are coronaviruses? So coronaviruses are called coronaviruses because they have this crown of spikes when you look at them with high resolutions. This is a private post stamp issued by one of the private post carriers in Germany, Ulster Post specifically, but it shows, you probably seen these graphical images around a lot of coronaviruses with these sort of spikes. And when you see the whole virus, it shows as a crown around the whole virus. So this is a pictorial cancel from Croatia that was originally planned for March 25th from the main post office in Zagreb, but they actually had to postpone it because a couple of days before or 3 days before the postmark was supposed to be issued, there was a huge earthquake, 5.3 magnitude earthquake that destroyed the main post office. And so they postponed the cancellation by about a month from March 25th to April 30th, and they moved it to a different post office. So you can see the zip code of the cancel was changed. But this is a nice postmark that shows the entire coronavirus there. So coronaviruses have been around for a long time. There's a lot of common human coronaviruses that circulate continuously in the human population, and they usually cause mild illness and account for a significant percentage of the common cold. So this is actually a nice little piece that I came across. It's actually a cover, first day cover for a stamp that was issued by Germany in 2017 as part of a series on micro worlds. So really, high resolution microscopic images of different things. And this one is for vitamin C, but the pictorial cancel actually shows a coronavirus. So, there's an association with vitamin C and fighting the common cold. So coronaviruses cause the common cold. So this would be a nice little postmark that you could actually use in an exhibit to talk about, just common coronaviruses. And you would probably just window it in the exhibit because in a thematic exhibit, you actually can't use the cachet of the first day cover, just the postmark and the stamp. So rarely coronaviruses can actually jump from animals to humans, and then they can cause severe disease. So the first time sort of in recent history that we know that happened was with the first SARS outbreak. So that was caused by a novel coronavirus. It caused SARS, which stands for severe acute respiratory syndrome. It was about 10 to 15% mortality. But because it was so severe, it didn't really spread very easily in the community. So altogether in that outbreak, there were about 8,000 cases in total and less than 800 deaths. So with this current coronavirus, on February 11th, the WHO finally named the novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 because it's quite closely related to this initial SARS-CoV-1 virus. And they called the disease COVID-19, which stands for Coronavirus Disease 2019. And Vietnam was actually the first country to issue a stamp with the name of the virus, COVID-19. So it was named on February 11th. They issued this stamp on March 31st. So that's very fast. It's only about 6 or 7 weeks between the naming and the issuing of the stamp. This is the first one that has COVID-19. And SARS-CoV-2, not as lethal as SARS-CoV-1, only about probably 1 to 5% mortality, depending on what region you're looking at. But of course, we know it's spread around the world. And these are the numbers that I looked at yesterday. So over 43 million cases worldwide now, and over 1 million deaths. So, I mean, this looks like baby steps now compared to what we're going through now. And just to put things into perspective for you, the seasonal influenza, so just the regular influenza flu that we get every year, that everybody gets the flu shot for, that has much lower mortality, only about 0.1% mortality. And in the US every year, in the last decade or so, it's caused anywhere between 12,000 to around 60,000 deaths per year. And COVID-19 has already caused more than 4 times that number of deaths in the last 6 to 7 months in the US. So, you know, this is much, much more serious. So on March 11th, the WHO declared the COVID-19 to be a global pandemic. So this stamp from Monaco illustrates that nicely, with Prince Albert II, who also tested for positive for COVID-19 in mid-March. So really nobody, you know, it's spread completely around the world. Lots of people that are very well known or famous have tested positive or gotten sick from it or even died from it. And we can see that it's gone around the world. And this is a nice pictorial cancel from Italy that was just very recent, that they issued for World Post Day, actually, that was available in a number of different cities. But you can see that the globe is sort of the backdrop of the globe is the coronavirus. And you can see symbols of the pandemic, especially the mask right in the middle there. So global pandemic. So how can the virus spread so far and so quickly compared to SARS-CoV-1? Well, it's sort of a perfect storm of characteristics of the virus. So it causes mild disease in most people. It's highly contagious. So every one person that's sick can spread it to usually 2 or 3 other people. So the spread becomes exponential. People can travel very easily now, so it can hop from one country to another very easily. And the key thing is that it's a new virus to us. So there's nobody that has any pre-existing immunity. And so for all of these reasons, you know, everybody's susceptible, and that's why it can spread so quickly in the population. So one way you can illustrate this, or, you know, sort of thought about how can you illustrate this sort of rapid spread or surreptitious spread through the population? Well, Indonesia issued a strip of 3 stamps for COVID-19. This was the layout on the pane. And if you look at the pane under UV light, you'll actually see it's covered with coronaviruses. So this is kind of a cool way to show that, you know, coronavirus can spread unseen and get all over the place without us being aware of it. So next chapter, it spread around the world and required public health measures to be put in place to control it. So to reduce the spread of the virus, people were asked to stay home. So you see lots of messages spread in philatelic slogans, because the mail is a good way to get messages out to people, right? So this is a cover from Turkey with a meter cancel that says evde kal, which means stay at home. And so in an exhibit, you would just meter that or window that part of the meter to show that. And other countries have also had slogans. So this is an inkjet slogan cancel on a cover from Jersey Post. They used it between April to June. Also, stay home, save lives. This is another private post company in Germany called Brief und Mehr, and they also issued a stamp, stay home, save lives. So you see this message repeated over and over in many different countries through different mechanisms. And we all, you know, learned a new meaning for the word bubble. You know, we all have our own bubble now. So this is a stamp from Alderney. Alderney and Guernsey together issued, I've got Guernsey here, but Guernsey and Alderney are kind of in one postal administration. And they asked for, they did a design contest where they asked kids to submit drawings, and they picked the best drawings. So there were 4 for Alderney and 8 for Guernsey, and this was one of them. I think this is a 7-year-old child drew her family bubble there. Social distancing is another term that probably we weren't all that familiar with, but with which we are sadly familiar now. So this is actually a Cinderella from Great Britain, from a company called Positively Postal. They issued a set of 4 Cinderella stamps depicting different ways that you could help to stop the spread of the coronavirus. So this is one of them, social distancing. And this is a kind of cool cover. So this is from another German private post company called Postmodern, I guess in German. And they've actually applied a label over this stamp. So there's a stamp peeking out under here, which is a Postmodern stamp, but they put a label over it. And the label has this hashtag ins fünf bitte, which in the Saxon dialect means 1 Meter 50 bitte, which is translates as 1 meter 50. So you'll see sometimes you'll see 2 meters, sometimes you see 1 meter 50. In this case, you'll see later on some say 1 meter. So, but all of these, the common theme is that we need to stay apart so that we can stay out of range of the droplets, which is how the coronavirus is thought to spread. We also have to practice good hygiene, so washing your hands. This is another one of those positively postal Cinderella labels. The UN issued a set of 6 stamps, 1 or 2 from each postal agency. This is one of them that had different icons promoting different aspects of how you could control the pandemic, so personal hygiene. And then, of course, in addition to stamps, you can use images on souvenir sheets. So even in the salvage of this Brazilian souvenir sheet, which was issued in July. So I've just magnified the central salvage here, and you can see symbols of hygiene. So using sanitizer, washing your hands, coughing into your elbow, staying 2 meters apart again, don't shake hands, et cetera, et cetera. This is an interesting, so this came out just 3 days ago, actually. So this was a pictorial cancel that was sponsored by the Taipei Philatelic Society for one of their meetings. And it's a very nice illustration of washing your hands. So there's a few things I just wanted to point out here if anybody's interested in Taiwan philately. So first of all, the date here is, you can see it's 24th of October, 109. So the year 109 is equivalent to the year 2020, which we're in now. So they use the Mingguo calendar, which uses year 1 as 1912, which was the year that the Republic of China was established. So you can count forward from 1912. And then these characters here say Taipei Temporary Post Office. So all of the different pictorial cancels in Taiwan for different events, they'll set up a temporary booth or a kiosk that will operate on the day of the event for a few hours, and you can get your cancels there. But then this symbol here in the brackets is Gui, which represents the last of the 10 heavenly stems. So it's the 10th stem. This is a sort of ancient celestial calendar that the Chinese use. And so the number 10 means that this cancel is actually available for 10 days after the event. You just have to go to the respective post office. So the temporary post office is no longer there, but if you go to the Taipei post office, you can still get the cancel. And now if you get the cancel with the symbol, that usually means they'll cancel like a maxi card or a cover and they'll hand it back to you. But there's also a version of the cancel without that symbol. And that has to be used on, if you cancel a cover with it, they have to put it through the mail. So they won't usually hand it back to you then. So there's usually 2 versions of these cancels. If you look on different websites, you'll see both versions, sometimes with and without that symbol. Another way to practice good hygiene is not to lick stamps. So people have coronavirus on their hands and they touch stamps, and you don't want people licking the stamps. So Mexico actually issued, they ordered an emergency set of definitives. So this is, these pictures are part of sort of a long running folk art definitive set. And every couple of years they issue new denominations, but these emergency stamps are actually self-adhesive. So it was a very rapid issue. They're very crudely printed. They're self-adhesive on rouletted paper. So they're very actually difficult to tear apart, and it's not very easy to get them apart cleanly. And there were also a couple of sort of commemorative type stamps. But these were issued for people so that they could use them without having to lick stamps. Although I'm not sure really how much they were actually used, because I don't think they were widely available in post offices. So wearing a mask is another way to, or another public health measure to try and reduce spread. So this is a first day cover of that Indonesia set that I showed you earlier. And it's got a nice mask printed right on the first day cover, excuse me. But in a thematic exhibit, so you could use this in a display exhibit, but in a thematic exhibit, you can't actually use the cachet from a first day cover. So another option would be to use a postal stationery envelope. So this is an envelope from Romania that actually has a printed indicium on it that shows a mask. So this would be a nice envelope to use. And actually all of this writing on here, it's all different types of things like wash your hands, stay socially distant. I think there's 6 or 7 different messages, different public health messages there. This is a booklet from France that shows someone putting on a mask. So this was a set of 12 stamps, and I'll show you some of the stamps later on. And then this is an interesting piece. This is from India Post. It's a receipt for Speed Post. And you can see at the bottom here, it's got a slogan, wear masks, stay safe. So that's another philatelic item that's a bit more unusual that you could add to a thematic collection. So all of these public health measures reduce and delay the peak of active cases. So even though most people have mild disease and not very many people get sick, if a whole slew of people get sick all at the same time, you're going to have too many really sick people that are going to need intensive care or need a ventilator, and that can overwhelm your healthcare system. So by flattening the curve, we give time for the healthcare system to increase capacity and to be able to cope with the numbers of patients that are going to be really sick. So that explains this slogan cancel from Great Britain, which is stay home, protect the NHS, or which is the National Health Service, and save lives. And you kind of think, well, shouldn't the National Health Service be protecting us? Why are we protecting the NHS? Well, that's the reason. You don't want the NHS to be overwhelmed. Like early in the pandemic in Italy, when there were so many people sick, their health system got completely overwhelmed. So when you're collecting Great Britain slogans, there's usually two different versions that are available from these two different types of sorting machines. One has the slogan and the date organized so it's usually Royal Mail logo, date, and then slogan. And then this other one does the slogan and then the date. And then if you have square envelopes where you put the stamp in the proper corner, but the envelope gets rotated 90 degrees when it goes through the canceling machine, the machine can actually reorganize itself to put the squiggly lines at the left to cancel the stamp at the left side, like you see here. And so it just does squiggly lines, slogan, and then the date on this side. So there's all different configurations that you can try and collect for the different Great Britain slogans. And then, of course, you guys probably, most of you have seen this postal stationery card that was sent out to 130 million US households at the end of March that lists all the different things that you can do for public health. And everyone needs to do their part for this to be effective, right? Public health means everybody has to participate. So it says here that you are at risk and your activities can increase the risk for others. So you're not just protecting yourself, you're protecting your community. And Singapore said it very nicely in this pictorial slogan, let's do our part. Everyone needs to do their part. And one way we can contribute is to use the contact tracing app. So a number of different countries have developed contact tracing apps that make it easier to track down. If you have a positive case, you can track down who might have come in contact with them so that they can quarantine and hopefully reduce further spread. So this is a meter slogan from Morocco that translates to let's contribute to protecting each other by downloading the Wakatna app. So that's their local app for contact tracing. And then Great Britain just a couple of weeks ago for 10 or 11 days had a slogan, protect your loved ones, download your nation's contact tracing app. When they say your nation, they're actually talking about, like, I think Ireland, Scotland, England, they all had their own contact tracing apps, but of course it can be applicable to, the whole world as well. Canada has one. I don't know if the US has one, an app to use. So all these public health measures, of course, lead to disruption of normal life. Lockdown measures led to panic buying of essential supplies. You guys can probably guess what's coming next. Toilet paper. There was a run on toilet paper. And so Austria Post, which always seems to have a sense of humor, are going to be issuing a stamp on October 30th, which is actually printed on toilet paper. So this is, they actually spent the last several months figuring out how to do this. They, strengthened, so it's real toilet paper. They laminated a film onto the back, which is self-adhesive, so you don't have to lick the toilet paper, because of course, when toilet paper gets wet, it, gets soggy, and who wants to lick toilet paper anyway, right? So, but this is the stamp. So it's printed on 3-ply toilet paper. The baby elephant here is in silver foil. It's on both the selvage and the stamp itself. This is the stamp itself here. And it comes in strips, and each souvenir sheet is the size of a sheet of toilet paper. Here's the stamp. They even made the perforations the same as the kind of perforations you get when you separate toilet paper sheets. And the cancel here has a baby elephant. So, you're probably wondering why the baby elephant. So in Austria, they have used the baby elephant in their public health messages as an example of 1 meter distance, right? So I just want to show you, this is just a few seconds. This is an ad, it's in German, but you don't really need to understand German to get it. Oops, sorry. Just see if I can play this.
Ich halte durch und halte weiter Abstand. Mindestens 1 Meter zu den anderen. Also so viel wie ein Babyelefant. Zum Beispiel in der Apotheke. Ist zwar immer noch ungewohnt, rettet aber Leben. Schau auf dich.
So Austrians love baby elephants for some reason. Anyway, but so it's kind of a joke stamp, but they also, there's a surcharge and that surcharge is going to charities. So, it's an interesting stamp that's coming out of this pandemic. But despite the panic buying, all of our supply lines remained open. So we were still able to get food onto the grocery store shelves, thanks to all the people that, grow the food and distribute the food, and all the grocery store workers. So they were all essential workers to help keep us going. And of course, people tried to make the best of a difficult situation. So one of the things that we've seen popping up are, designer masks, right? So a lot of enterprising companies have been making fashion masks, right? So here's a stamp from French Polynesia that where your mask can match your outfit, right? So it's a new accessory. This is a pair from Czech Republic that was meant to honor all these different emergency services, but the masks are pretty colorful. So I think it's kind of cool. And you see different companies making different sorts of masks like that. Many people have been working from home. This is a souvenir sheet from Singapore that was actually probably not part of a COVID issue. It was called Quirks in the Island City. But a lot of Singaporeans apparently work from home. So, it kind of fit right in with the whole pandemic gestalt anyway. But of course, working from home can lead to isolation and mental exhaustion. So this is a nice stamp to illustrate that. This is actually Greenland's COVID-19 issue. I'm not really sure what that's supposed to, what the artwork is supposed to represent, but it's a nice depiction of sort of exhaustion and when we work from home, there's no separation of work and relaxing. So we have to learn new ways to kind of relax. And of course, all of these measures can lead to social isolation and stress as well. This is a stamp issued by Serbia at the end of September for their Joy of Europe. So the Joy of Europe is and this is the logo of the Joy of Europe. The Joy of Europe is an annual art contest. It's a children's art contest that's held every year. This year they held it virtually, and they get kids from around the world to submit artwork, and they choose 1 or 2 pieces of art for a stamp every year. And so this year you can see you can just feel the angst coming off the stamp, right? This is how the pandemic has affected the children and youth of the world. And a lot of the other artwork that were chosen for the labels on the sheet, you can also see the turmoil and the angst that the pandemic has caused. I just found it interesting that this is the logo for Joy of Europe. It kind of looks like a coronavirus, but it's not. It's just a circle of kids, meant to represent the world. But of course, it does look kind of like the coronavirus, which you can see here also on the salvage. Cancellations of international flights, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, led to a lot of mail disruptions. So this is a cover that I sent to a friend in Brazil. I mailed it on June 3rd. It was returned to me on July 29th with this nice label, which you could peel off. And eventually flights got back, things have been coming back to normal. This is a pictorial cancel from Romania that celebrated the resumption of international flights of their airline to Rome after a 95-day suspension. And so eventually Canada started opening up mail routes as well. And I was able to take this label off and send it back to my friend. So this is postmarked now August 17th. Underneath that label is a nice transparent label saying resumed service, and he received it in October. So from June to October, it took 4 months for him to get that letter. Due to restrictions on travel and restrictions on large gatherings, many events have been canceled. So this was a booklet that the French Postal Administration issued for the Paris Philex, which is a big philatelic exhibition. It was originally scheduled for June, but in April it was canceled. It was right at the height of the pandemic. And so they put this overprint on it, and you could buy this booklet from the La Poste website. This is a pictorial cancel from Germany showing a steam locomotive. So there's a steam locomotive works in Meiningen, which is a railway repair shop. And they have a steam festival every fall on the first weekend of September, which is visited by up to like 15,000 steam locomotive enthusiasts. Who knew, right, that this was a thing? But of course, people couldn't travel, and so it was canceled. That's what it says here, abgesagt wegen Corona, so canceled due to Corona. So you can, just like in the US, you can send envelopes and request this cancel, and they'll send it back to you. So a friend sent me this. If you put a stamp on either side, they'll cancel it both ways. And it might be nicer to use this one, window this one in an exhibit, because you can see the Corona text a bit more clearly than when it's on the stamp here. Many events have been postponed, so especially a big philatelic event. So London 2020, that was scheduled for early May, has been postponed to 2022. But this booklet had already been issued back in March with the London 2020 logo. So it'll be interesting to see if they issue anything new once this event does go ahead. Also, the Melbourne 2021 exhibit, they looked really far ahead and decided to postpone that until September 2022. And so Australia Post took 200 of these Queen's birthday souvenir sheets and overprinted with this cancellation message, and gave those sheets to the exhibition committee of Melbourne, of the Melbourne exhibit, for them to sell to raise money for their exhibit, for their association. Of course, one of the biggest events that was postponed was the Tokyo Olympics. So that was scheduled for late summer and has been postponed till next summer. That was announced at the end of March. This is one of my favorite items, which I showed in my last talk as well. So this is a postal stationery card. It's got a 70 yen indicium printed on it. It was sold for 100 yen. And this was sent on the first day from Japan to Austria, but returned to the sender with a little message taped to it. And part of the message says that it was returned because it could not be delivered to the addressed country due to suspension of acceptance. A lot of events, instead of being postponed or canceled, have gone virtual. So Fleet Week, New York. So Fleet Week is a big US Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard tradition. A lot of military ships dock in a few big cities for a week, and the crews can visit the city and the public can tour the ships. So Fleet Week New York was canceled, but later on it was converted to a virtual event. So you could send in covers to get this canceled. This is just a picture of a nice one that I found on eBay. And then this one is the Pensic War. So it's an annual medieval camping event held by the Society for Creative Anachronism. And it was scheduled for late summer, was postponed to next year as well. But they did hold a virtual event on Facebook for the week of August 3rd to 7th. So this is the cancel that was advertised in the USPS Postal Bulletin for August 3rd. But I think a lot of people maybe didn't realize that there were actually 2 dates available. So because this virtual event was held August 3rd to 7th, there was a cancel available for the first day, and there was also a cancel available for the last day. So you could get both. So I think any covers that got there before August 3rd probably got the August 3rd cancel, and then any covers that got there later probably got the August 7th cancel. But of course, life, many aspects of life still have to continue despite the pandemic. So in the Ukraine, we know that, they've been fighting a war in the Donbass region against the separatist forces of the self-declared Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics. This is all tied in with the annexation of Crimea by Russia. And so when they issued their COVID stamp, they have 2 front lines that they're fighting on. One is the COVID front line, and the other is the military front line in the Donbass region. So that's the significance of the picture here. And of course, issuing stamps is one way to kind of declare your sovereignty. So the Donetsk People's Republic have a state-owned postal operator called the Donbass Post, and they actually issued their own stamp. Of course, this isn't recognized by the UPU, but it is valid locally. So it was a stamp showing an ambulance, and the writing here says, "Thank you, doctor." And of course, a lot of events, even though they went ahead, they had to be adjusted with social distancing measures. So Hajj, of course, is a big annual pilgrimage, which is very important in the Muslim religion. It occurs 2 months and 10 days after Ramadan ends. So it would have been the end of July this year. And the holy sites in the cities of Mecca and Medina normally host more than 2 million people during the Hajj pilgrimage. So this is, Saudi Arabia issues a stamp for Hajj every year. So this was the stamp that they issued in 2017. It just is a nice stamp for showing the crowds of people around the Kaaba. And the stamp that they issued this year, you can see this, that everybody is spread out here. And they've got the inscription, the health and safety of Muslims is our priority. And just to show you, this is what they did. They drew circles on the ground for people to follow with dots so that people could do the social distancing properly. They only allowed 1,000 pilgrims to attend this year and no international travelers. So only people who are already in Saudi Arabia. Sports organizations have grappled with how to hold events safely during the pandemic. So the APAO, which is the one of the Olympic associations in Iberia, held a series of seminars to discuss sport in the era of COVID, and they they sponsored a special pictorial postmark that you could get from Portugal. So just like in many other countries, you could send covers in and request the cancel. And again, this would, you would window this for an exhibit, but I like to collect it on the whole cover. The Serbian administration of Bosnia and Herzegovina issued a souvenir sheet for sports. So I think this was actually a pre-planned issue that had nothing to do with COVID. And what they did was they took these and they did a second pass printing, and they added the text for COVID-19. They added this little mask symbol, and they added the 2-meter spacing here, because of course it makes no sense, right? Like you can't play basketball with 2-meter social distancing. But we know, like NBA, they initially canceled a lot of games, but then they resumed later on with an abbreviated season. Soccer has happened, the US Open happened, but and I think for a lot of these events, no audience members, and there were a lot of restrictions for people traveling. So no fans in the stands, it's very, very kind of strange. But, life went on. Okay. This was a big collector event in the Czech Republic. So the Czech Republic hosts a big collector fair in the spring and the fall, so March and September in Prague. And so it's the biggest collector fair in Central and Eastern Europe. And it's not just stamps, it's coins. It's basically anything you can think of that people collect. So, people travel from all over Europe to go to these fairs. So the spring fair was canceled because that was right at the height of the pandemic when everything was starting. And so this is a postal stationery card. It's got the logo of the spring fair, but this little overprint here basically says spring canceled or postponed to the fall. And then in June, the pandemic restrictions were lifted from the Czech Republic. Like in a lot of countries over the summer, things got much better. They only had a few dozen new cases every day. So they started planning for the fall fair, which was going to be held at the beginning of September. So they went ahead and started planning it. But what happened was sort of in mid-August, as people started coming back from vacation, the number of cases started going up again and started rising alarmingly, actually. So a lot of countries soon canceled, imposed travel restrictions, like you couldn't go to Prague. But the fair still went ahead. They had originally planned like only 1,000 people indoors in any one area. I think they reduced it to 500, which is still a huge number of people, but they still, they had masking, they had social distancing as much as they could, but the fair did go ahead. And they issued this card. So this is the logo of the fall fair, and it says the first philatelic exhibition after the COVID-19 pandemic in Europe. So a little bit optimistic that they thought the pandemic would be over and this would be the first philatelic event after the pandemic. So these were cards, the indicium here pays for local, the domestic letter rate, and they were sold for a little bit more. School resumed as well, but a lot of classes went virtual. So Singapore issued this set of COVID stamps to, Singapore likes to do a lot of cute things. So they made the Super 5, which was a set of superheroes to help kids, figure out how to keep themselves safe and healthy with all the different public health measures. Okay. But, we're going to get through it. So if everybody does their part, we'll get through it. And communities have pulled together to support each other. So this is a slogan cancel from Germany that says "Together Against Corona." So this was available at over almost 80 different mail centers. So, you know, some people will go nuts and try and collect every different mail center. That's the number there of the mail center, but much more feasible to collect. So this is a stamped on cancel. This one is actually an inkjet spray on cancel, where that some of the mail centers have more modern equipment. So I think only, as far as I know, only 5 mail centers have this one. So that one is much easier to try and collect all the different centers. This is another private post stamp showing solidarity. And then community, you know, so Isle of Man issued a set of 8 stamps with different messages. And one of them was that, you know, community will carry us through. So this is another way to show that communities are pulling together. But instead of a stamp, you can actually find something a bit more interesting. So Isle of Man also had this postal stationery card. Here's all the different things that were on the stamps, but the indicium that they chose to use was the community one. So, you know, this is a bit more of an interesting philatelic item than just showing the stamp. This is an interesting one. I like finding things that don't obviously have a connection at first, but you know, they do when you kind of dig a little bit more. So this is, again, Brief und Mehr. Remember I showed you a stamp from Brief und Mehr. This is one of the German private post companies, and it's a meter cancel here. And if I just blow it up, the hashtag here is Wir Münstern das. So it's from the city of Münster. It's from the city works. But Wir Münstern das is actually a play on the words Wir meistern das, which means we can do it. Like Bob the Builder, you know, can we build it? Yes, we can. And when you look at the Münster City Works website, they've got a message there that, you know, when things get tight, we pull together. Now we're called again to fight the coronavirus pandemic, and we, you know, we have solidarity. Wir Münstern das. So this is a message of solidarity. So it's something that you can use to illustrate that. Other expressions of solidarity. So this was one of the early stamps from Switzerland, where you just paid the 5 franc surcharge, which went to charity, and Swiss Post donated the 1 franc postage for you. So that was kind of a first. And this is another one of those Singapore slogans that says, "We are in this together." So lots of expressions of solidarity. And we found different ways to stay connected. So in New Zealand, they did something called the teddy bear hunt, where people put teddy bears in their windows so that when kids were out on their walks, they could look for all the different teddy bears. And so they asked for people to send in pictures of all the different teddy bears that they had. You know, here's one in a field that's like a haystack teddy bear. And they picked 6 to put on this souvenir sheet for their bear hunt. And of course, writing letters is very important to stay connected. So Australia Post just recently issued a couple of stamps. They did this in collaboration with an organization called Beyond Blue, which is supporting mental health and trying to keep people mentally well. So it's kind of cute. It's 2 different stamps, and it comes in this sheet of 10. And on the back of the sheet, there's a different message at the back of every stamp. These are self-adhesive. And what you're supposed to do is buy 2 stamps, use one on your letter, and then enclose the other one in the letter for the person that you're writing to use to send a letter back to you. So that's what the instructions say here. You know, put the other stamp in the envelope so that they can write back to you. Because we know handwriting is personal and it brings us closer together. So that's what that inscription on this is an official personalized sheet from Liechtenstein that was available kind of early in the spring. And, you know, so because we can't visit, we can try and stay connected by writing letters to each other. So this is another private post stamp from Germany. A lot of different postal administrations distributed postcards that could be sent for free, that allowed people to send postcards to each other. So these are a couple from Ireland. These are actually huge sheets. They're A4 sized, and you would cut them apart to get 2 postcards on each sheet. And there's an Irish and an English on each sheet. And then this is a slogan cancel from Australia. You know, so by staying connected in this way, by writing letters, we can still stay safe, but stay connected. And finally, we've had, you know, we're going to get through this with help from essential workers. So essential workers have carried us through the pandemic. This is another one of those Isle of Man stamps. Work will carry us through, all the essential workers. There's actually, in addition to the regular stamp, they actually issued ATM stamps too. So this was the ATM, you could order a strip of 8, 1 for each of the designs. So this is what you got when you ordered it from the philatelic service. It has this barcode. This is actually the date. 2125 means the 125th day of 2020, which was May 4th, which is the issue date. And this was just printed on by offset. So there was no, you could only get this denomination, basically. There wasn't any other variety you could get. But the philatelic service also had these handheld printers where they were true variable value ATMs. So you could ask for, this is the Europe, this is the local rate. You could also get the rate for Europe. You could get the rate for the rest of the world. And it had a different barcode down here, Isle of Man 01507, with the date again. But if you got it printed on a different date, that date would be different. Whereas this one, if you ordered it, no matter what time you ordered it, you would just get this one with the date of issue. And then if you go to the post offices in Isle of Man, you can actually get two different ones. So this one comes straight from the postal kiosks with the denomination and an actual control number. And this number goes up by 1 for each stamp on the strip, in contrast to these two, which don't change. And then this is available at the counter. So the postal kiosks dispense them in strips. And then at the post office counter, you can actually buy single stamps. So these are all variable value stamps. So there, you can do a little study within your collection of these different types of ATM stamps. Of course, postal services are an essential service. So this Morocco stamp was the first stamp that actually showed a postal worker thanking postal workers as essential workers. This is one of the set of 12 that France issued back in September. And Portugal just issued a set of 5 stamps commemorating 500 years of the postal service. But all of these stamp images are, show different social distancing measures. So this is a delivery person delivering mail with a mask on. Malaysia had a slogan cover showing a circle and a cross through COVID-19 saying, "You stay at home, we'll deliver." This is an interesting couple of stamps. So because postal services are essential, I'll just step back. So in New Zealand, the postal delivery was deregulated, I think, in the late 1990s. So anybody can actually register with the ministry as a postal, as a deliverer of mail. And so the New Zealand, the Weston Winery actually has their own wine post, and they issue their own stamps. They've been issuing their own stamps for about 30 years now. And so when the pandemic hit, all mail carriers were designated as essential services, and they continued to deliver mail outside the lockdown restrictions. And so Wine Post issued this stamp when New Zealand went to alert level 3 on March 23rd. And then a couple days later, when they went to alert level 4, they applied this black COVID overprint. And so they used these stamps to deliver their mail and their bottles of wine. So it's just an interesting local post that you can try and get for your collection. And of course, emergency services. So this is another stamp from that set of Guernsey with the children's drawings. This is a stamp from a Curacao souvenir sheet. Kyrgyzstan just issued a set of 3 stamps with labels attached, conveniently telling you what emergency number to dial to get fire, police, or ambulance, 101, 102, or 103. And of course, maintenance and sanitation workers are very critical to keep us all safe. So this is another pictorial cancel from Taiwan, and you can see that little Gui symbol here. This is a maxi card. And this was a personalized stamp issued, organized by Philippe Hostel, which is a big collector association in France. And of course, healthcare workers have been very critical. So in Canada, we had a slogan cancel bilingual thanking healthcare workers that ran from May 1st and finished on September 3rd, which was the last day. This is the very first COVID stamp from Iran showing medical workers as national heroes. Moldova just issued a set of 5 stamps as part of it's actually part of a series that started last year of great personalities that changed world history. This year, there's also Beethoven, Magellan, Raphael, and I think Mother Teresa, and Florence Nightingale, because it's the International Year of the Nurse and Midwife. But what they did, so it's issued in a sheet of 8 like this, they actually added a surcharge only to the Florence Nightingale stamp, and they added this inscription which says the surcharge is intended for medical personnel battling the COVID-19. And then another set of Cinderella stamps, this time from an American company called the Perforated Post, which shows, we've all seen these pictures of healthcare workers with their battle scars from wearing the N95 face masks. And I'll just finish, every story has an epilogue, as I've been taught for my thematic exhibit. So We're all hoping for an effective vaccine so that we can get back to normal life. So here's an aerogram from Vatican City that was issued in September, and the indicium shows that, you know, I don't really understand these because vaccines are supposed to be given to people, not actually given to the virus. But I think this represents a vaccine that, you know, will kill the virus. And this is a personalized stamp from Portugal in search of a vaccine. But meanwhile, you know, let's stay strong and united. This is a postal stationery card from Spain with a very clever design. So let's stay strong and united and applaud those who are working to end the pandemic. So you can flip it. And actually it's got the writing on both sides too. And that's it. So thanks for listening and hope everybody stays safe. These are some of the resources that you can check out and some of the places where I got some of the images and stuff. So thanks a lot.